Listen, here's the uncomfortable truth nobody warns you about. The first thing that gets people in serious trouble in any survival situation isn't the cold, the hunger, the darkness, the loss of power, or even the lack of gear. It's their own mind. Before the world collapses around you, your psychology collapses inside you, and that internal collapse is faster, quieter, and way more dangerous than anything outside. People imagine survival as this heroic, gritty sequence where they rise to the challenge. But in reality, most people fall into the same invisible trap long before they even take their first step, and that trap has a name: normalcy instinct. The brain refuses to update its expectations even when reality is screaming, hey, everything is different now. Think about it. Your brain has spent your entire life learning that lights turn on when you flip a switch, food shows up when you open a fridge, and help is just 3 digits away. So when the power goes out, or communication lines go silent, or the routine breaks, your brain keeps insisting nothing's wrong. It's the mental equivalent of someone calmly sipping tea while the room fills with smoke, because this sort of thing will sort itself out. The problem is that in real crises, blackouts, disasters, breakdowns of infrastructure, every minute you spend in denial is a minute the situation tightens its grip. Military survival manuals actually warn about this. Hesitation kills. Not because the situation itself is unsurvivable, but because people wait too long to adapt. Biology hates ambiguity, so the brain defaults to the familiar even when the familiar is gone. What makes this trap even deadlier is the second psychological twist. Once that initial denial cracks, most people overcorrect. They go from nothing is wrong to everything is lost in a single emotional swing. This panic reaction happens because your brain wasn't allowed to slowly adapt. It was forced into a sudden confrontation with reality. And now it floods your system with cortisol, tunnel vision, and a rush of bad decisions. This is why you see people sprinting in the wrong direction, wasting energy, shouting, or grabbing totally useless gear. Panic isn't loud, it's incredibly stupid. It makes you ignore physics, biology, and logic. It makes you think you can outrun dehydration or overpower exhaustion or go without shelter because I just need to keep moving. That instinct feels heroic in the moment, but biologically it's your limbic system hijacking your frontal cortex and turning you into a reaction machine. The next trap is something that sounds harmless but wrecks more people than any storm: task saturation. When your environment shifts suddenly, your brain tries to compensate by doing everything at once. You start thinking, I need water, but also shelter, but also warmth, but also a plan, but also I'm hungry, but also where am I? Your brain overload. This is where small mistakes begin stacking up. People spill their only clean water, forget simple knots, drop equipment, waste matches, or lose track of directions. The brain under stress narrows the field of attention, making you miss obvious things like wind direction, fresh footprints, or the fact that you've walked in a circle. The solution isn't about being superhuman, it's about forcing your attention onto one controlled action at a time. There's a reason military operators repeat the phrase, slow is smooth, smooth is fast. The brain performs better when you deliberately slow your pace. This section is based on practical field survival experience rather than formal academic sources. Another dangerous psychological trap is what experts call fantasy rescue bias. This one gets more people into trouble than any animal thirst or temperature drop. It's the belief that someone will show up and fix everything for you. You keep telling yourself, they'll find me soon, or someone will restore the power, or help must be coming. And while hope is important, relying on rescue freezes your ability to make decisions. The problem is simple: every minute you spend waiting is a minute you're not acting. And most survival outcomes are determined in the first few hours. The moment you outsource responsibility to an imaginary rescuer, you stop problem solving, you stop conserving energy correctly, you stop thinking creatively, and your brain becomes passive, dangerous in an environment where passivity is a threat. Now here's the twist almost nobody sees coming. Overconfidence is just as deadly as fear. Once someone gets a little success, maybe they manage to start a fire or found a water source or rigged a bit of shelter, they start behaving like they've already won. The survival brain relaxes too early. And the moment you relax too early, your situational awareness collapses. You forget that firelight attracts attention. You forget that water sources also attract predators. You forget that night temperatures can drop faster than your body can compensate. Survival is a moving target. The environment changes, weather shifts, energy drains, and if you stop adapting even for a few hours, the environment catches up and punishes you for assuming you are safe. The most experienced survivalists never say, I've got this handled. They say, this works for now. Another trap that feels harmless but is absolutely brutal in the wild is mental time distortion. When you're stressed or scared, minutes feel like hours. When you're exhausted, hours collapse into minutes. People underestimate how long they've been walking or overestimate how long they've rested. They assume a fire is burning longer than it actually is. They assume dehydration hasn't set in yet. They assume daylight will last just a little more. Your brain's internal clock goes completely unreliable, and if you don't consciously track time by shadows, stars, or cycling tasks, you start slipping out of rhythm with your environment. The world works on consistent cycles. Your brain doesn't. Losing track of those cycles is a silent threat that eats you from the inside out. This section is based on practical field survival experience rather than formal academic sources. But the final and most vicious psychological trap is one people rarely admit: emotional leakage. When fear builds up and when exhaustion piles on, when the environment feels too big, you start making decisions based on feelings instead of strategy. You avoid areas that feel wrong instead of analyzing them. You wander toward things that feel comforting, even if they're dangerous. You hoard useless objects because they remind you of home. You rush through tasks because you're frustrated, and frustration is a terrible decision maker. Emotional leakage is subtle. You don't notice it until something goes wrong, like wasting energy on a task that didn't matter or ignoring a problem that did. Listen closely, the mind isn't your enemy, but in survival situations, it's the first system to malfunction. Equipment fails second, the environment fails last. If you want to survive anything, blackouts, disasters, sudden crises, or even just moments when life punches you in the throat, you have to train your psychology to adapt faster than your instincts can sabotage you. And that begins with one simple principle: don't trust the first emotion you feel. Not the denial, not the fear, not the overconfidence. Pause, reassess, reset your expectations. Because the moment your expectations match reality, every survival technique becomes 10 times more effective.